let's move on to the Michigan defense. Jesse Minter, just an incredible game plan that he was able to put in, and then incredible execution by his players. Everyone was talking about, and he talked about this in the locker room after the game too, everyone was talking about coming into the week in that game about Michael Penix, those receivers, the offensive line, the time that he has to throw, how he moves in the pocket. But it was the Michigan defense that, and Michigan hadn't faced anything like that, everyone was saying. And they hadn't. But Washington hadn't faced a defense like Michigan's either. 13 drives for Washington, 13 points, which is ridiculous. One pass play of 20-plus yards after they ranked second in the country with 77 coming into the game. It was a 44-yarder in the fourth quarter. Michigan was already up 2 scores. They could have hit on a couple earlier in the game but weren't able to do it. But still, I mean, the fact that those were so limited, Michigan kind of sat back a little bit, made him take underneath routes to the sideline, and then the tackling by Michigan to keep them short of the stick so many different times. Mikey Sainer still. Keon Sabb missed one, but made a couple. Plenty of other guys rallying to the football. I just thought it was an incredible performance. Jesse Minter year 2, much better than Jesse Minter year 1, and that was a pretty good year too.
Yeah, Will Johnson's pass tackle was what could have been a huge play. It reminded me of the TCU play last year, right? And when DJ Turner took a bad angle and it turns into a long touchdown, and then boom, you get another game. It's crazy. People don't realize, this was a 7-point game. They had a big completion down in Michigan territory, down by 7 with 11 minutes to go, but it was called back on a holding penalty thanks to Braden McGregor. Exactly. And everybody's screaming, oh, it's a terrible call. And it's like, you know what? When you grab a guy, you reach out and grab a guy when he's running by you and there's nobody else there, that's going to be flagged every time. So, and so it was, as Jesse Minter told us in the locker room, guys, he said, it's great complementary football. When the secondary needed the defensive line to step up, they stepped up. When the line needed the secondary to step up, they stepped up. So it was fantastic. And to me, this guy is going to go down as one of the best defensive coordinators in Michigan history, even if this is his last year. 2 years, 2 playoff game appearances, and 1 national championship. And I loved his talk after the game about how everybody came up to him asking about Washington's receivers and, oh my God, what are you going to do? And everything else. And he said, nobody was asking me about our guys and how Washington was going to contend with us. And they did one hell of a job. In fact, the 2 biggest plays that could have been, one that was and one that could have been, were the result of 2 of your veterans, Rod Moore and Mikey Sainer, still not communicating or miscommunicating. So, which is completely out of character. It had nothing to do with what Jesse Minter did. So the end result, fellas, is a defense for the ages, one of the best in Michigan history, especially in this day and age, fellas, with wide open football. What they accomplished out there under him was outstanding. I do believe he'll move on. He wants to be an NFL guy, but he told us he loves Michigan. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what opportunities come up for him. He's the type of guy where if it doesn't work out, he won't have any qualms about coming back to Michigan, because if he did, I think that there's a lot left for them to, again, it's so tough to say run it back now that there's a 12-team playoff, but a lot of those same guys are coming back, including Will Johnson, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant. So we'll see whether it's Minter or not. Whoever is the defensive coordinator next year has a pretty good setup. And again, I know there was a lot of talk about, and again, people sort of got on the Washington guys for saying, oh, we beat ourselves, we made mistakes. That's what every losing locker room in the history of football has ever said. Even those years when Michigan, had a few blowout losses to Ohio State, it's, oh, we were a few plays away, et cetera. So leave those guys alone for that. They're competitors. Like, that's a tough night for them. They had Michael Penix in absolute hell. I went back and finally watched the game. Hadn't seen it until I was on the plane last night. Yeah, there was a 60-minute cut that Ballas and I caught in the hotel the other day, but finally watching it snap to snap, they had him confused. They had him shook. They had him. I mean, he took shots. He wasn't comfortable at all. Only sacked him one time, but did enough to just kind of affect him, knock him off his spot. And yeah, I mean, Michigan, we talk about those fortunate bounces. Yeah, there were a few of those in this game too, in terms of he misses a wide open Rome Odunze down the field. And early on in that game where a tone could have been set where this is going to be a 4-quarter heavyweight fight. It still kind of was, but I cannot say enough about, and Jesse Minter, to his credit, he stood there and answered all the questions at media day. Like said, this is a whole different monster. It's unlike something they haven't seen before. And he was right. They hadn't seen a quarterback as good as Michael Penix all year. You can argue that they saw as good a receiving core with Ohio State. But even then, I mean, what those guys were able to do at Washington this year was incredible. And to be frank, they're better coached than that Ohio State team is. So what he was able to do, I mean, just doing enough. What do we talk about in the Rose Bowl? Like the key to moving the ball on offense was making those guys on Alabama just think for like a split second too long. And that was going to be the opportunity you had to make your impact and make plays on this game. And they flipped that to the other side of the ball in this game against Washington, where, just giving Penix something extra to think about at the line of scrimmage was an advantage for them. And that's why, they go down as, SP Plus has them finishing this season as the best team in the country, which you decide that on the field anyways. But when the computers and the results line up, that's always a nice little middle finger down to the SEC. And I'm sorry, I totally forget what metric it was, but there was a prominent analytics guy on social media on Wednesday that said, when you take in all the efficiency numbers and his metric into account, this is actually a better national championship team than that 2019 LSU team, which to me is still the best. I think that's the best college football team I've ever seen. But man, oh man, Michigan was dominant, and it started with that defense. And, they didn't have to play that offense because they were the best in defense in the country by a wide margin when you look at how the game's played. So kudos to them. Kudos to Jesse Minter. That's the old adage is defense wins championships, and that is 1,000% the case for Michigan.
Yeah, he was, I'd go with Georgia a couple of years ago as one of the best I've ever seen, at least defensively. And one thing I wanted to add was there was one locker room this year that didn't say that they beat themselves, and that was that Michigan State locker room, 49-0. It could have been 70-0, fellas, if we're being honest. I just wanted to point that out.
I agree with that. I'm glad you pointed that out as well.
Thank you, Clay.
If you didn't, I probably would have thought of it and said it myself. But just the last thing on Minter and the defense, I thought one of the calls of the game or plays of the game was when they had that 3rd and goal on Washington's first possession. They motion a guy across the formation. Mikey Sainristil still goes with him. Michael Penix checks to the sideline. Their sideline thinks they have man-to-man coverage. They call it in. Turns out it's zone. Keon Sabbs waiting for their man-beater route. Breaks it up in the end zone. They kick a field goal. Instead of tying the game and kind of equalizing things there, Michigan holds their lead and obviously, never gave it up. But I just thought a huge moment when you rewatch that game. And I know people on the broadcast, watching it live, we were watching it in person. And we were able to kind of see that a little bit better than us. But that was fantastic. We'll see, obviously, what guys come back.